Hi everyone, and this is a three-part video on my RC car collection, and I wanted to talk a little bit about any issues I've encountered and the pros and kind of cons of each one of these vehicles here. So the video is split into three. It's going to be the Traxxas Slash video first, it's going to be the X-MAXX second, and then the third video will be the E-Revo and the Losi Mini 8. So obviously in the first video we'll focus on the three Traxxas Slashes you can see at the front row here. And you know, these cars have been extremely reliable. I mean, I've not really had any issues with them. I mean, I have had issues, but not in the way that you're probably expecting. I mean, obviously the usual parts always go with these things. So like the spur gears, they're quite a common part that you swap out quite often, depending on how many jumps you do, the abuse you put them through, the gearing you've got, the motor you've got, etc. The battery you're running. Sometimes you can strip them by just abusing them. But, I mean, that's not really something that's happened that often with my Slashes. The Traxxas Slash series of RC cars are extremely strong and durable anyway. I mean, I've had a few issues with all three, but nothing serious. Most of the time it's something simple like a spur gear, or the canister or steering blocks are broken. And at the worst of times, I mean, I've had a couple, as you've seen in the previous videos. The Fox there had a drive shaft assembly replacement, it needed doing, and also the original Slash here also needed that doing. If I take the shell off on this, you'll see underneath that actually, I mean, the shells are strong. I mean, they do get broken in time, but I mean, if you take them up like this, they last even longer. I mean, this is fine now. I mean, that's been running like that for a couple of months, no issues at all really with the shell. As you can see, I mean, this is almost a year old, this RC, and it's still looking fine. I mean, there's not really any damage to it. The reason I have the canister and steering blocks here are actually to go onto this model today. Actually, last time I ran this, I did actually break this wheel off clean, as you can see there. So that'll be replaced today, but that is not because it's been driven on tarmac. It's not because I'm doing light jumping. That's because this thing is being seriously thrown about, as you've seen in the previous videos. So the spur gear in this original Slash here is actually the original spur gear. That's not been replaced. It's running the high-speed pinion, and I normally run on 3S, along with the Baja buggy shell that you've seen in a previous video as well. That was another project that I did for my girlfriend. She actually uses this truck, and you know, she's happy with it. She thinks it's a great car. It works well, it's fast. You know, you're talking 55 miles an hour, and that's in another video, which you would have seen the Mike Jenkins here doing. I'll link you in the description below again to that, on the high speed and 3S LiPo. I think another thing to mention is, I mean, everything is strong, but it's only as, you know, it's only as strong as the weakest component. And a lot of the time in these things, I mean, a lot of it's plastic. So you're going to find that the metal components are stronger than, or steel components or aluminium components are going to be a lot harder wearing than the plastic, or put a toll on the plastic parts. An example of that would be the fact that you have a hinge pin that holds the arm on. Obviously they're aluminium, but they're stronger than the plastic arm. So if you smash into something hard, the arms do get thrown or ripped off. That's not happened on this original Slash, that's the irony. But it has happened on the Fox edition over here. If I take this body off here, you'll see underneath that actually I'm running the RPM arms on that. I mean, that was a £10 upgrade part, put those on, not had a single issue since. So it does pay to obviously, you know, go ahead and get those optional parts sometimes. And you've seen the abuse this Slash has been through recently. You know, in the previous videos, jumping, thrashing about, and I'll link you again in the description below to that. So you would have seen the skate park video that I did for this Slash, and this thing was jumping 20 feet in the air, landing on solid concrete, and it's still fine. There was no real damage to it. Okay, yes, the drive shaft in the centre there got, you know, slightly bent, but I just bent it back, and I replaced it in the end anyway, out of personal choice. Not because the truck wasn't working, or because there was an issue with it, just because I had the money available, and I purchased the part to replace it. Okay, so what about the Mike Jenkins? You guys have not seen much with the Mike Jenkins edition. Obviously the speed was done on this, the speed runs and the GPS, but apart from that, this machine hasn't really been used or abused in the same ways that the original Mark Jenkins and the Fox edition Slash have been. I mean, if we look at this, it's in pristine condition. considering this has been run only a few times, I mean, it's been run off-road as well. In fact, you probably would have seen the video of me and my girlfriend driving Ellie with this Slash and that shell, and obviously me with the Mike Jenkins and that body, and I actually ran into a lamppost. That snapped the front arm off here completely. Okay, so again, this Slash is also running the high-speed pinion. Obviously, they all three have the cooling fans on the ESCs, and that is a massive improvement to the cooling of the device, just in general. I mean, I'm running, like I said, the high-speed pinion on all three, and the 3S LiPo, and that does take a toll on the ESC and motor. There's a lot of heat issues when you're running off-road. You're not actually supposed to run the high-speed pinion off-road with the 3S LiPo, just simply because the heat is so extreme. You can damage the ESC and the motor. I've not had any issues with this setup at all. So if we look at the bottom of them, should we look at the damage on that? There's a little bit of scratching and scraping on the bottom there, but nothing's really damaged in that respect. There's not really any chips or chunks out really of the plastic, just a few scratches and scrapes. Again, we'll come to the Mike Jenkins edition here. I mean, that is, as you can see, I mean, it looks brand new still, it's hardly used. In the future I may do a giveaway with this one, just simply because I don't really use it that much. I use the Fox or the original Slash, or obviously now the X-MAXX, which will be part 2 coming up shortly. No issues with the steering servos, no issues with bearings, no issues with the springs. One thing I would mention though, the shock caps do tend to pop off. These parts here, the parts that actually contain the oil, that contain the spacers and the springs, and attach it to the shock towers here, they do tend to pop off quite regularly, and there is an aluminium upgrade for these, which I do recommend actually. I haven't done that on these simply because I just don't really care about that kind of stuff, but you know, if you are pedantic and you do want a bit of strength and that kind of redundancy, just change these little shock caps here. I'll show you on this one again here. Just change these shock caps to the aluminium ones, screw them back in, obviously change your oil if you need to, and you shouldn't have that issue. That's happened to the original Slash more than these two. So there we go, that's an overview of my experience with the Traxxas Slashes so far, and it's very positive. I don't really have anything bad to say. I mean, they're very strong. You've seen my previous videos, they do get run through the mill quite a lot, they do get abused, and today I'll replace this. I mean, that was probably about £10 to replace, so they're the parts over there, and you know, apart from that, considering the amount of abuse they take, you know, that's not bad. £10 for repair on a week. One thing I would like to mention about the Fox and the Mike Jenkins edition, these are both onboard audio editions, and I'd like to just say how impressed I am with the onboard audio system. Well done, Traxxas. I mean, it's a good design, it works well. I mean, it's not too loud, but it's not inaudible either, and it is robust, it's strong, it works for a while quite well. I mean, if the issue I found is if the speakers get wet, they still work, but they stick to the shell, they stick to the body here with like a ring of adhesive, and that just stops the shell from like rattling against the speaker as it vibrates. That does become unstuck as they get wet, but when it obviously dries up, they re-stick. In time, that kind of wears out, so you do get a little bit of kind of rattle. And it doesn't sound that bad, it just gets a bit kind of frustrating that you pay a lot of money for the onboard audio on top, and obviously that's what happens in time. But it's a good system nonetheless, it works very well, it's very good, you've probably seen it in my other videos. So yeah, let's go and put these hubs back on. There we have it. Fixed. Thanks for watching, guys. Please stay tuned for part 2, which is all about the X-MAXX and how I've got on so far with that. Let's do this then. See you in a bit.